Okay. Hi and welcome everyone to the next episode of the Keptn Dev meeting. It's today a week where we are going over the issues and bugs that have been resolved the last 3 weeks. And before diving into that, 2 weeks ago we talked about doing these presentations on the Keptn deployment, which is our Keptn installation that is triggered every day based on the master build. But before the meeting was kicked off today, we already identified the situation that the CI script for deploying the latest version of Keptn is not scheduled, or it's not deploying the latest build when we have a not scheduled trigger. And this means that currently it's not the latest master running there. And we are not going to present today on this instance. But the first action item would be to change the CI script to obviously deploy a Keptn on demand. Who is going to take a look into that?
I will speak with Moritz about this.
Okay, thanks a lot. And do we have identified any other blocker for doing that? For doing the presentation on the Keptn on Keptn?
Maybe create some better test examples there, because the project is currently created with empty data basically. So provide maybe the sock shop and some evaluations there.
The sock shop itself might not work, or at least it's going to be complicated because we have 3 instances there, all on the same cluster as far as I remember. So you will overwrite each other all the time, but evaluation should be doable. And I mean, delivery would also be doable, but Helm service would need to be run in execution plane, remote execution plane. So that might be a little bit too much for just providing some test data.
Okay, this means we should look for an alternative instead of a sock shop.
Well, obviously that would also be a good segue to my features that I implemented, but it's also the fact that you will override each other. So we have dev, staging, and production or whatever there, and if you deploy like on any of those, you will override anything. I mean, for just test data, it's fine if we can inject them, obviously, but it won't be functional in that sense that you can approve a deployment or something like that. So it's really just, here are some test data, you can look at it, but you can't interact with them.
Got it.
Evaluations, you can interact, obviously.
Okay, but at least we need to have a set of test data that we inject into this deployment.
Maybe a Keptn self-monitoring. So each, like dev monitors itself, and staging monitors itself, and production monitors itself.
Is someone up for thinking or working on that to have some test data in there? I think maybe first a little bit of brainstorming would be needed to get an idea what we can ingest, and then setting up the data itself.
Put an action item on me. I will try to think about something and discuss this with Moritz, how hard it is also to install this data automatically.
All right, thanks a lot, Giovanni. Okay, then
welcome.
here we have a script change and then test data. All right. Okay, but then we should be ready to do the next demo session based on that one. Cool. Then I would like to hand over directly to Christian, who is telling us about his features he has implemented. Yeah, therefore I stop sharing. Christian, you're muted.
Thank you. So I have two pull requests I want to present today. The first one, as already teased in the last section a little bit, is a new demo service, so to say, for our integration tests. So our integration tests used to use the cards microservice, and that one is quite resource hungry and also takes quite long to get up and running for the Java microservice. Basically, we know there is ways around this with a different Java virtual machine, etc. But in reality, we wanted to have a very lightweight service for the integration tests, and we took a look at Potatohead, which basically is a little page that has there are some features behind it. You can look it up. If you just look for Potatohead and CNCF, you will find it. Essentially, it's a very lightweight Go-based microservice, takes like 20 megabytes of memory and comes up literally within a second or so, plus whatever overhead is handled by Kubernetes. And I've implemented this in this pull request, which is still not merged because I was not able to run the integration tests so far on Google Cloud. Excuse me. I think this is still something that should be done, but I can obviously show the results from a local integration test. So locally, I was able to finish this in 5 minutes roughly. I think last time I ran it, it was 2 or 3 minutes. There is some network dependency, obviously, that might take longer or not. With this integration test, I, however, discovered an issue, which I also posted and fixed now. And the issue itself is more of a feature request. I don't want to go into too much details, so I'm just going to tell you what I did. And this is in JMeter service. I added a retry loop for the dial timeout that we do. So in JMeter, we have like a sanity check. Is the service that we are going to run a test against actually up and running? This has been in before. And I just added a retry loop around it because it seems like the service that we are deploying, the Potatohead service, is coming up so quickly that the information that there is a new service and the new pod running, etc., is not populated quick enough against all Kubernetes nodes. And when Keptn runs the dial timeout function here, we actually run into a timeout. Although if you try it again 5 seconds after that, it works. So it's a weird Kubernetes behavior. I can't really explain it, but the retry obviously will fix it. And for now, we have 3 retries and we wait 5 seconds in between. So in the best case, it works immediately. And in the worst case, we add an additional 15 seconds to our pipeline. Any questions about those 2 features or pull requests? All right, if not, I'll hand it over to Klaus.
Okay, thanks. Let me share the screen. Okay. So, yeah, this sprint was a lot of bug fixes. So let's dive into the first one. The first problem was that a service incorrectly showed that there are open remediation. So this is this icon here, or even in this screen, there was a red indicator that there's a running remediation. And this is now fixed that if remediation is not running anymore, then the indicator is also gone. This was because the fetch did not check if the remediation sequence is running or not, just if it if there are any remediation sequences. That was this bug. Next to that the webhook service, webhook file, YAML files that are created on bridge side. The problem was if a remediation, if a webhook subscription is updated, for example, cards.db, and I change it from dev to staging, then the webhook in staging, just fix that, then the webhook in dev is not deleted correctly. So let's go to this one. You see I'm in cards.db and I have my webhook here. And if I now change it from dev to staging, this should now be deleted and the correct one in staging should be created. Next to that, also there was a problem with the task. Now see another problem. Yeah, because we removed some default task and that's why it is now empty. And we have to check that, I guess. And yeah. And now in the cards.db, this is now correctly deleted and updated. And in dev, in staging, it's now correctly here. Then the next issue, in the sequence screen, service screen, and in the environment screen, we showed the approval task. And we allowed the user to accept or decline it. The problem was if we are in the sequence screen, there was the problem that if we accept it, it was not correctly updated in the service screen and in the environment screen. And this has also been fixed, that if it's checked in environment screen, service screen, or sequence screen, it is now updated in each screen. Yeah. Next to that, we had a weird behavior with our show all SLI button, because if there are more than 10 evaluations, more than 10 SLIs configured, then the button shows up to show all SLIs and not just 10. And this sometimes had a weird behavior that it was not where it should have been placed. And this has also been fixed to take the width of the chart instead of take a fixed width for the positioning. Next to that, the environment screen, there was a weird behavior, or let's say old and new behavior. If you initially load the environment screen, it was a bit empty or something like a skeleton. And after a couple of seconds, the environment screen was filled with the data that is shown here for the sequence and the evaluation score. This is now fixed in this regard, that the loading bar is shown until all information is loaded. And that's basically it for this bug. Next to the features, our CLI did not let us install Keptn on a higher Kubernetes version that it was supported. Now, if there's a higher version available, if there's a higher version you want to install Keptn, then there's a warning message if you really want to install it, and you can then disline or accept it, and it will be installed even if the version is higher than the supported one. And questions?
No, not a question, just a remark. But then then the risk is on the end user side. We are not,
and we also noted that in the message if the version is higher.
Okay.
Yeah, and the last thing, we now added tests for our push server. So we now also use Jest for testing on the push server side, and some other mocking tools to test nearly everything. So just we intercept the calls if we if you want to retrieve some things of the shipyard or other core elements. And we also don't just call the function for it. We also can trigger an example request so that also the API for it, the retrieval of the parameters, etc., can be tested. And yeah, that's basically it. It's not merged yet. It's yeah, now it can be reviewed, and yeah, that's basically it. Any questions? If not, then I will hand over to Erwin.
Thanks. Yeah, first of all, this sprint also from my side was mostly about bug fixing. The first one I would like to present is one in the bridge. If the bridge was kept open for hours in the background, there was a weird behavior that, yeah, if some API calls failed, for example, that might happen if the internet connection is lost or yeah, some other reasons, the UI looked weird because we have been showing this error message on top and you still saw the view where you were at. And this even might happen in any other view as well. And I changed this behavior so that, yeah, not this prominent error is popping up, but if any API calls are failing, and this might especially happen for our polling process, then we just show a toast message as, yeah, with the error message now. So you see a toast message popping up, but the polling won't stop. So if the internet connection is back again, the polling will succeed and you will get an updated bridge there. Yeah.
Can we think of a mechanism to see if the user is active and be like, okay, user is not active, I don't know, slow down those polling mechanisms? Because obviously we cannot prevent that somebody leaves it open, but there is always a chance that there's a memory leak or network outage or whatever, and we will accumulate a lot of errors or whatever. And if we slow this down, then there is a benefit that I can see.
We could definitely detect when the user is leaving the focus from the application, from the web browser, and either disable the polling at all or yeah, slow it down. That would be actually a new feature, but which we have not considered yet, but that would be something we can do. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. The next bug that was fixed is webhook configuration allowed to register itself to a service create or service delete event. And the problem here was that in case that oh, it was not described here what the problem actually was, but in case that you subscribe to a service delete event, the webhook service was triggered, but the webhook YAML was already deleted. And those events are actually internal events. So, and we also had them hard-coded in our bridge. So we got rid of them, and your integrations should not subscribe to service delete or service create event. We saw the issue at Klaus's presentation that he had a configuration where either service delete or service create was subscribed to, and yeah, this needs to be, so subscriptions to those events need of course to be updated. Yeah, that's actually a rather small one. Another one that we had with secrets was that the bridge was not validating secret names on the length. So we allowed the user to type in secret names with more than 253 characters, but actually the API would then return a 500 error. And what we introduced now is validation. So actually it will show an error message that the name must not have more than 253 characters. And additionally, if the name of a secret is very long, so for example, not 253 characters, but 200 characters long, it might not fit the screen size. And this was, expanding the view here, so you would not be able to reach the delete button. And this was also fixed here, so long secret names don't overflow. And we added the validation in the secret, great secret form. We had also a wrong error message when creating secrets, and it was saying that dots are actually allowed for secrets, but since they are not allowed actually, there was just a change of this error message so that it says that only lowercase alphanumeric characters and dash is allowed. And it, of course, has to start with an alphanumeric character. And one more thing that happened in the bridge is the empty sequence screen after creating a project. So when you created a project from the Keptn's bridge and switching or clicking on the sequence screen, you see you saw an empty screen, which is kind of weird, and you had to refresh the browser to start polling or loading sequences there, and this was fixed. So now the sequence screen will show up, but show the user a message that no sequences have been executed yet. It will also provide a link to instructions how to trigger a sequence. And while sequences are loading, we also show a loading screen here, a proper loading screen here. Are there any questions?
I mean, the last bug you showed is empty sequence screen after creating a project.
Yep.
But the user flow would be after creating a project, they would like to create a service, meaning that we point the user to the service screen then.
Yes, actually, when you create a project, let's name it test 2. I think you're directed to, where do I have some onboarding? Here I have a shipyard. I think you're redirected to you're still on the settings page. So you're here in the settings page and you see the project settings, and you can also click on the services and create a service, but you're also able, of course, to click on the sequence screen, as you can see. And in that case, you had an empty screen, and actually you had to refresh the browser to have this screen working correctly. That was the bug.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as you can see, this is fixed. And now it says no sequence is triggered yet. Follow the instructions to trigger a sequence.
All right, yeah. Thanks for clarification.
Yeah. And 2 features that were added from my side, actually, this is a documentation thing. So we document the supported browsers for the Keptn bridge, which is not yet published. So I can just show you the commit here because it's Keptn GitHub IO. So we have here our supported browsers. And this is basically just saying that we are not supporting Internet Explorer. because we got some requests there, and the Keptn bridge is not designed to work on mobile devices, so we don't optimize the UI to work on mobile devices yet.
How do we verify this claim, like that the latest version of each of those browsers is supported?
Good question. One problem that I also see is that we are not testing the Safari in our tests actively, and the other browsers use the same engine. So this is like covered in our unit and UI tests.
Yeah, maybe we can add the base version that we are using for Cypress and say like 68.plus.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, thanks for the feedback. And sure, we need to find a way to test Safari because this is just testable on a Mac device. So
Also 11 plus, I'm not sure which version is currently the latest one, but
not sure, but this
yeah.
is rather older. And,
there's a lot of Safari versions out there that are not capable of parsing certain date time formats, let's put it like that. There is helper functions around that, obviously, and Angular solves this problem somehow. But I'm just saying there is a lot of things that can go wrong, and there are some things that went wrong in the past. So especially for Safari, we will need something.
Yeah, we have a boilerplate, or how is it called? Service in place in our Angular dependencies, which adds functions if they are not implemented. And they state that they are backwards compatible to version 11 plus. So that's why we decided to stick to this also, but definitely we need to test or find a way how we can test the Keptn's bridge against Safari. Okay, thanks for the feedback there. We'll note that and adjust that. And one more thing I wanted to show is that we show the payload of the last event, or you can view the payload of the last event in the Webhook config, or generally in any integration configuration. So when you configure a integration, like adding a subscription, for example, you have this show example payload button here. So currently it's disabled because I don't have a task selected, but once I select a task, for example, the evaluation task, the button is enabled and it will load example payload. Of course, I don't have an evaluation triggered event here, but I think I have a deployment event here. Oh, good one. Good question. Why I don't have an event here? Oh yeah, of course, because I'm in the wrong project. But if I go to my Sockshop project, it will load and display the deployment triggered event, and you can view it. Especially for the webhook configuration, this might be handy because there you can configure your API call or your webhook call to include data from the event payload in the future. And as you have seen, if the event was not triggered in your project, so we consider only events from that project, then it will show that we could not find any events of that type. Yeah. Are there any questions? If not, then I'm handing over to Florian.
All right, thank you. Okay. the last sprint, I exclusively worked on bug fixes to increase the stability of Keptn. So I'm going to go really quick over each of those. Yeah, basically the first one was about the shipyard controller. And it's redirecting. Why is that taking so long? All right, now here we are. So this first issue was that the queued sequences might not have always been completed in the order in which they have been triggered. So as you can see here, for example, Andreas provided us with a screenshot where that was the case. So for example, here, a couple of sequences were triggered at roughly the same time. And you can see that the first one was executed and timed out this eventually, but then not that one was executed, but for example, the one that was executed a couple of milliseconds later. And the reason for that is when a triggered event comes in at the shipyard controller, it will first do some checks, whether the project is available, whether the sequence to be triggered is available, etc., and then create a sequence queue entry with the timestamp that it currently has. And this means that if some events come in at roughly the same time, that might be that one of the later events is processed earlier by the shipyard controller. And to reduce the probability of that is I have changed the shipyard controller to not use the current time when it's reached the code where the sequence should be added to the queue, but it will instead use the timestamp of the incoming triggered event that in order to establish the ordering within the queue. So now this should happen much less. Nevertheless, if we do still have some networking going on there, so if a couple of events are sent at the same time, of course, we cannot guarantee that they're received at the API in that exact order. But this, I think, a very unlikely edge case that might not happen very often. Any questions about that?
I would have a question.
Hmm?
I also in the past saw kind of a related issue actually. Just a question, did you thought about introducing some kind of sequence numbers for Keptn events? In my experience, introducing such monotonic increasing numbers is much more reliable than relying on timestamp. Was that?
Yeah, we could think about that, yeah.
Because this fix reduces just as you said, the probability of things going wrong, but I think it does not fix the actual root cause behind it.
For for a monotonic number, you would also need to have a service in between, because if you upscale API service or whatever, you'll need like Redis or whatever for locking that monotonic number. So that's also not the final solution.
That's implementation detail how you do it, yes, but as a concept, I just wanted to ask if you thought about this and discarded this idea because of problems, but probably it's just too heavy to implement it as a bug fix.
Yeah. All right, if there are no further questions, I will continue with the next one. So this was a rather small one in the CLI. So in one of our recent community contributions, I apologize for my internet being so slow today. In one of our recent contributions, we got an addition to the CLI where the current config file that is used is printed out every time a command is executed. That itself is actually quite handy, but still it might not be desired to have this printed out every time. So that's why I changed the log level of this message to verbose, so that it's only printed out when the user explicitly says so, by providing the -verbose flag. All right, any questions about that? All right, then let's continue. The next one is also in the shipyard controller. So this is about housekeeping tasks, so to speak, to keep the internally used MongoDB collections tidy.
Yeah, there are some issues over GitHub.
Yeah, I will explain it in the meantime. Yeah, so usually when a sequence is executed by the shipyard controller and orchestrated, it maintains a collection of triggered events for the tasks that are currently open, so tasks that have to be executed in order to proceed within the sequence. And those triggered events are also made available via a public API in order for remote execution plane services to query those events and see whether they should take over a task. And if everything goes well, this collection is emptied once a task has been completed. But of course, not every time everything goes well. So we had some cases, for example, due to race conditions or something like that, where the entries of the triggered events collection remained in that collection even after a sequence has been finished. And also, actually, those two issues here are kind of related. So also we had the case where when a project was deleted, all the relevant collections have been deleted as well. But due to some timing issues, we discovered the case where, for example, the triggered events collection of the previous instance of a project was still available after the project was recreated with the same name. And so in the pull requests I made for those two issues, I made sure that the collection is cleaned up properly and we don't have any triggered event corpses lying around here. And yeah, for each of those PRs, I've also extended the integration tests to automatically check this behavior and see whether the collections are tidied up properly. All right. Then the next one is also about the shipyard controller. Let's see if GitHub works again. Yep, it does. So this is about the abort feature or cancel feature for sequences. So the way it previously worked was that you could actually only cancel a sequence once it has actually been started. So the first triggered event has been sent, and, but we had some cases where, for example, a couple of sequences have been piled up in the queue, and one sequence was, for example, didn't finish properly and was in a stalling state. And it was possible to cancel this this blocking sequence, but it was not possible to, before doing so, clear up the queue of the other sequences because they had not been started at this point yet. And therefore, this issue was created, and in the pull request that fixes that, we made it possible to cancel a sequence before the actual execution has been started in order to yeah, clean up the queue, basically. Any questions about that? All right, if not, let's continue with the next one. So this is about the webhook service. All right. Yeah, so we have the feature of disabling the automatic sending of finished events for the webhook service. So this allows Keptn integrations that should be called by the webhook service to take over the responsibility of sending a finished event with the proper payload. And previously, the webhook service, in that case, just sent the curl request. And if no immediate error happened, meaning during the execution of the curl request, it didn't send any further event because that was the intended use case. But still, for example, if the actual HTTP request resulted in a status code equal or higher than 400, this wasn't detected as execution error of the curl binary, so to speak. And therefore, we have changed the logic a bit. So now the webhook service will inspect the curl command to be executed and check whether the fail with body command is set. And if not, it will add this flag to the argument, to the curl command. And this means that now with that flag, status codes higher or equal than 400 will also be interpreted as a error of the curl command. And with the fail with body flag, it's also possible to get the HTTP body. So for example, 404 not found. And then the webhook service will, in that case, send back a finished event with the proper error message. And additionally, when working on this, I also took an additional safety measure because, as you might know, it's also possible to import secrets and use those in the webhook request. And with the change I made, I basically go through the response that should be sent out and make sure that no instance of one of the secret values is included in the resulting error message. And if that is the case, it will be replaced with a couple of dots to not leak out any secrets. All right, I think we have covered all issues from me, so I will hand over to Anna.
Thank you.
Just need to stop share. So.
I tried to be quick and to have them already open. It's going to be all bugs, so it will be quick. So the first one was about the upgrade command. Basically, when you did the upgrade from the CLI, some of the services were not upgraded, or they were upgraded in reality, but it was not shown in the uniform. And this is because, to save ourselves from denial of service, uniform was not updated in case you didn't have a change in the service name. Now we also check on the version, so it works fine. Next one, it goes in pair with Ermin's fix on the secret service being too long. This is an error from Kubernetes, and the configuration service used to wrap it up inside a 500 status code. Instead, now we are exposing this error with a proper 400 something code. Next issue was from the materialized view of the shipyard controller. So Bridge was showing different score. That was the Lighthouse evaluation score. This is because you can have other services that returns you a finished events for an evaluation. So now in the materialized view, we are filtering so that we show the score from the Lighthouse. What else? This is also a tiny one. it was an error message which was again not being properly reported. So now this is correct. Basically, in the moment in which we are checking the SLO file, if we have a problem from the Git, now we get that error being shown in the bridge as well. And then what do I miss? I have this horrible thing in front. Either tiny one, there was an inconsistency in between the model for the GET request of the secret and what was the response of the API. Now both of them are capital letters because that's what brought no breaking change in the whole thing. This is also super tiny. We had some places in which the user managed option was signed with the dash and sometimes with an underscore. Now everything is underscored and tests and everything has been fixed accordingly. Finally, deleting a service did not delete the subscription. So there was no check in the uniform that what subscriptions correspond to a service that is not there anymore. Those should be changed. Now this is being done via changing the querying once the uniform database and changing this for each of the uniforms. In case of a subscription which was based only on that service, that would be also eliminated so that we don't have strange behavior happening. I think that's it. And maybe I will leave it to Bernd if there are no questions. Good.
Thank you.
How do you stop sharing like this?
Thanks. Okay, this my presentation. When you're able to see my screen, should be able to. Yeah. Will also be very quick. First of all, this was something discovered by Adam, and he also provided actually a fix for this. It has to do with the form of the shipyard, which is uploaded to the bridge, and thus, thus effectively cause the bridge to crash. It was if you upload a shipyard without stages inside it, so effectively an invalid shipyard file, then the bridge had all kinds of problems and basically crashed. He already provided a very correctly fix for this, but he had some problems with Git and this messed up his pull request. I just put his fix, I just took his fix, refined it a little bit, provided some tests and committed the fix, and this was already reviewed and is now on master branch. You see, we just basically do a tiny sanity check also on the shipyard spec stages slice, which should be greater than 0. Otherwise, we return an error and present it to the user so that this form of shipyard doesn't make it even to the system and is catched early, so to say. And the second thing, also discovered by Adam, was a nasty out of memory bug in the distributor. I took some time and discussion with Adam on his system to get an idea why this is happening. In the end, I was able to reproduce it locally with unit tests, and basically we had here some problems. You see it also here in the logs that the cache we are internally using, the distributor component, keeps growing and growing. And of course, you see it here. It will be then at the end very quickly at some point where the container then crashes with the out of memory exception. Why this was happening? It has something to do with multiple events still in the system which had the exact same cloud event ID. My suspicion is that this was not introduced by the user, in this case Adam, because we actually have logic in place which is just regenerating IDs when they're entering the system. So this was some kind of weird behavior of I think the shipyard controller, which in the end ended up, you can also see it here, in multiple events having the same ID. This is, however, something I could not find out why it happened. I could not reproduce it. In the end, it doesn't make too much harm if such events are stored in the system, except this one here for the distributor where we have out of memory. Now the distributor will not get confused by such situations. So we still need to keep an eye on this if such a situation could still occur or this was fixed by some bug fix in the shipyard controller or any other component. However, we can, although this should not happen, we can survive such a situation, and it should not be bad for the performance of the system. In the end, I also took the opportunity to do a little bit of refactoring. As you see, there are quite a bunch of changes here to make the distributor more reliable and to improve the code quality a bit also in other corners of the code base. That was it for me. Handing over to Moritz. Is he there? No, then I don't
No,
know.
but I can say a few words on his behalf. He's basically working on the pipeline to improve our release pipeline for Keptn on Keptn, so the main repository now. And that was basically his sprint. Hopefully we will manage to release Keptn even faster. And I think now it's time for Suraj.
I hope I'm audible. I don't have permission to share my screen. Okay.
So now you should have them.
Sorry, let me share my screen. I cannot find the option to share my screen for some reason. Okay, found it. Okay, hope my screen is visible. I'm working on managing CLI config with Viper. Right now, we are doing our own implementation with load CLI config and store CLI config. I'm rewriting it to use Viper to unmarshal the config and marshal the config back into files. It's still work in progress. I think that's it. And Johannes, this reminder from last time.
Thanks. I forgot. I forgot to do that.
No issues. That's all from my end. Thank you.
All right. I think this brings us to the end of the agenda. Yes. Are there any other questions? Okay, then yeah, then I think we can close the meeting for today. As shown today, yeah, it was definitely a week or a sprint where stability and robustness have been implemented of Keptn so that we have a reliable product and yeah, get the product that we all would like or are happy to use. Okay, with that said, thanks for joining this meeting. Stay tuned and see you next Thursday. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.